suddenly appeared on the carpet, lying there stiff as a board. I only noticed later that one of my soft toys had vanished. I think both our hearts missed a beat. My friend and I swore to each other, sealing the oath with blood like Tom and Huck, that we'd never tell anyone about the cat. After that, of course, I kept trying in secret, without any witnesses, but it never seemed to happen when I wanted. In fact, there didn't seem to be any rules at all, except that it happened only with stories I liked. Of course, I kept everything that came out of the books, except for the snuzzcumber I got out of the book about the friendly giant. It stank too much. When Maggie was still very small, things sometimes came out of her picture books. A feather, a tiny shoe. We put them in her book box, without telling her where they came from. Otherwise, she'd never have picked up a book again for fear the giant serpent with a toothache or some other alarming creature might appear. But I'd never managed to bring anything living out of a book, Eleanor, until that night. Mo looked at the palms of his hands, as if seeing there all the things his voice had lured out of books. Why couldn't it have been some nice creature if it had to happen? Something like, Babar the elephant. Maggie would have been enchanted. Yes, I certainly would have been, thought Maggie. She remembered the little shoe, and the feather as well. It had been emerald green, like the plumage of Dr. Doolittle's parrot Polynesia. Well, it could have been worse. Typical Eleanor. As if it wasn't bad enough to be locked up in a tumble-down house far away from ordinary life, surrounded by black-clad men with faces like birds of prey and knives in their belts. But obviously, Eleanor really could imagine something worse. Suppose Long John Silver had suddenly appeared in your living room, striking out with his wooden crutch, she whispered. I think I prefer this Capricorn after all. You know what? When we're home again, in my house, I mean, I'll give you a really nice book. Winnie the Pooh, for instance, or maybe Where the Wild Things Are. I wouldn't really mind one of those monsters. I'll sit you down in my most comfortable armchair, make you a cup of coffee, and then you can read aloud. How about it? Eleanor, you're missing the point. Mo laughed quietly, and for a moment his face didn't look quite so careworn. No, Eleanor, I will do no such thing, although it sounds very tempting, but I swore never to read aloud again. Who knows who might disappear next time? And perhaps there's some unpleasant character we never noticed, even in the Pooh books. Or suppose I read Pooh himself out of his book. What would he do here without his friends in the 100-acre wood? His poor little heart would break like dust fingers. Oh, for goodness sake! Eleanor impatiently dismissed that idea. How often do I have to tell you that fool has no heart? Very well, then, let me ask you another question, because I'd very much like to know the answer. Eleanor lowered her voice, and Maggie had to strain her ears to make out what she was saying. Who was this Capricorn in his own story? The villain of the piece, I suppose, but can you tell me more about him? Maggie would have liked to know more about Capricorn, too, but Mo was suddenly not very forthcoming. All he would say was, the less you know about him, the better. Then he fell silent. Eleanor kept at him for a while, but Mo evaded all her questions. He simply did not seem to want to talk about Capricorn. Maggie could see from his face that his thoughts were somewhere else entirely. At some point, Eleanor nodded off, curled up on the cold floor as if trying to keep herself warm with her own body. But Mo went on sitting there with his back against the wall. As Maggie felt herself drift off to sleep again, Mo's face stayed with her in her slumber. It emerged in her dreams like a dark moon with figures leaping from its mouth. Living creatures, fat, thin, large, small, they hopped out and ran away in a long line. A woman, scarcely more than a shadow, was dancing on the moon's nose, Suddenly the moon smiled. That's the end of that chapter. I thank you again for joining me, and I hope you come back next time for Chapter 17.